All right, let's talk about a piece of technology that's been quietly brewing in the background, getting ready to completely reshape finance. It's called tokenization. Now, it might sound a little techy, but its potential is so huge that it has grabbed the full attention of the world's top financial regulators. So, yeah, we need to dig into this. Here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll look at the big promise of tokenization. Then, we'll pop the hood and see how it actually works. After that, we'll dive into the 5 big financial fault lines, where things could really go wrong. And finally, we'll get the verdict from the regulators on the risks today and the rules they're planning for tomorrow. So, what's the big deal here? What is this idea that has everyone from tiny startups to giant banks so fired up? It really all boils down to this one core concept of tokenization. At its heart, tokenization is pretty simple. It's about creating a super secure digital version of a certificate of ownership for almost anything. Think about stocks, bonds, even a piece of art or real estate. Instead of some dusty paper deed locked in a vault, you've got a digital token. And this token lives on a distributed ledger, which is just a fancy way of saying a highly secure, shared database that's incredibly hard to tamper with. And this is where you see the fundamental tug of war with tokenization. On one side, the potential upsides are massive. We're talking about making transactions way more efficient, cutting costs, and even making investing more democratic. You could theoretically break up ownership of a giant skyscraper into tiny, affordable tokens. But on the flip side, a lot of these benefits are still just theory, and they come with some serious trade-offs, like adding new layers of complexity and a whole mess of unanswered questions for regulators. And listen, this isn't just some academic debate. The Financial Stability Board, or FSB, which is basically the world's top financial watchdog, just dropped a huge report digging into these very issues. And their analysis is what we're using as the backbone for this whole explainer. Okay, so to really get a handle on the risks, we've got to look under the hood. How does all this newfangled tech actually work in practice? The FSB is really zeroing in on these 5 features. You can think of them as the different knobs and levers on the tokenization machine. Things like who's in charge of the network, what assets are used to finalize payments, how much you rely on outside data. All of this is absolutely crucial for keeping the system stable. But there's one on this list that's a real game changer: programmability and composability. Programmability just means you can build rules right into the asset. For example, a tokenized stock that automatically pays out dividends. Cool, right? But composability, that's where things get wild. It's like having financial Legos. You can just click different digital assets and services together to build brand new, sometimes very complex, financial products. It's an engine for innovation for sure, but as we're about to see, it can also be an engine for hiding risk. And if you think this is all just some far-off, futuristic stuff, think again. This is happening right now. We've got major players like the European Investment Bank issuing tokenized bonds. JP Morgan has its own JPM coin that it's using for huge wholesale payments. The technology isn't coming, it's already here. So if the tech is here and the big banks are already using it, where's the danger? Well, that brings us right to the heart of the FSB's report, the 5 financial fault lines where the whole system could start to crack. I mean, when you have the power to create entirely new financial products on the fly and automate all these complex transactions, you have to ask, what's the catch? What are the biggest weak spots that could potentially threaten the whole system? The FSB flags these 5 key vulnerabilities. Now, a lot of these risks, like leverage or liquidity mismatches, are nothing new. They're as old as banking itself. The real worry here is that tokenization could act like an amplifier, taking these old risks and cranking them up to 11 in ways we've never seen before. Let's take a look at liquidity mismatch, for example. Imagine you own a token that represents a small piece of a commercial office building. That token can be traded 24/7, so it feels super liquid, right? You can sell it in a second. But the building itself, not so liquid. You can't sell a building in a second. So what happens when there's a panic and everybody tries to cash in their liquid tokens all at once? Well, you get a classic bank run, but on a tokenized building. And remember those financial Legos we talked about? That idea of composability? Well, it can make it dangerously easy to build hidden towers of debt. A token that's backing one loan could be used as collateral for another loan, and then another, creating these tangled, opaque chains of leverage that are almost impossible for regulators to see until the whole thing comes crashing down. So, with all these pretty scary risks on the table, what's the FSB's final call? What's the verdict on the threat that tokenization poses to financial stability right here, right now? The answer, for now, is minimal. And that's a huge relief. The FSB basically concludes that because the market is still pretty small, and most of these experiments are happening in controlled, sandboxed environments, the immediate risk to the broader financial system is contained. For now. But, and this is a really big but, that minimal risk assessment could change in a heartbeat. It all depends on three things happening. One, the technology scales up and becomes widely used. Two, those financial Legos get used to build much more complex and interconnected products. And three, this is the big one, regulators and supervisors fail to keep up with the pace of all this innovation. So what's the game plan? Well, the FSB is basically sounding the alarm for regulators to start preparing now. First up, they need to get better data so they can actually see what's going on. Second, they've got to figure out how existing rules even apply to these new kinds of assets. And third, because this tech doesn't care about borders, regulators from different countries absolutely have to start talking to each other. And that brings us to the final critical question. Tokenization is a powerful new frontier in finance. It has incredible promise, but it also comes with very real dangers. The race is officially on. As this technology explodes in use, will regulators be able to build the right guardrails in time? Or will innovation once again outrun oversight, setting the stage for the next big financial crisis? That really is the multi-trillion-dollar question.